Hi everybody, hope you're all coping up well with this pandemic situation, staying safe at homes. This is Praveen Kumar. You can find me on the internet under the footprint of Praveen Science. And I do have a website which is praveen.science. If you don't know who I am, you can go there and check me out, get to know about me, find me on a bunch of social networks, talk to me, and I would love to chat. Okay, let's going on to today's topic. It's about creating static sites using React.js. Okay, so you might ask me, when you say something about React.js, it is going to be a dynamic website because React.js is a JavaScript library that actually generates single page web applications using JavaScript routing and a lot of things. So let's start with why I need React.js when I start to think about a static site. The first reason is React.js is client-side rendering. So I feel as a developer more comfortable and confident with working on React.js and trying to develop a website. And one more thing which I really love about React.js is it is built on JavaScript, and coming from a PHP background myself, I know, don't throw stones at me right now. I'm not using PHP anymore, but I would love to use PHP in a better way, which I'll come back later. Okay, so when it comes to building static sites, there are a lot of repeated patterns and elements which are supposed to be um, kind of violating the do not repeat yourself principle. So that is one of the principles which I really love to follow in almost all my software development applications. Now, when it comes to React, we have this component based rendering kind of a technique. So React components are the React.js actually works based on components. So all the parts in React.js, whether it is pages, whether it is um, structures, s- sections, etc., everything can be componentized. It's a component based programming. And in this case, if a website, like let's say a marketing website or a static site which is mainly used for marketing purposes with 5 or 6 pages, they all contain almost similar patterns in their website, right? You could have seen a lot of companies that have the same similar types of buttons, similar types of widgets that can be reused in most of the places in a website. So thinking about all these things, if I start writing a HTML and CSS for this, it's definitely gonna take me ages. The first thing which I would say is, for writing a HTML and CSS is actually an old school thing, because no one at this point of time uses CSS for anything other than um, maybe building the static site and then deploying it. Even now, all the static site servers are capable of compiling on the run. Like for example, we have a lot of things like now.sh, search.sh, etc. They all kind of like give you abilities to compile the uncompiled sources. For example, you can have something like SCSS that can get compiled to CSS. You have something like HAML that can be compiled into HTML. You have handlebars. Um, you have Pug, etc. Jade. So those kind of things will help you in templating and other things. Now the world is moving towards templating and other things, and when I was working with PHP, there was this thing called WordPress. I don't want to recommend anything about WordPress or say anything about it, because it is one of the most vulnerable thing. And for people who are looking for static sites, I don't think WordPress will be a good reason, because static sites are meant to be very powerful, very fast, very efficient, because they don't have anything on their backend. So there are no database accesses, there are no um, file accesses in case of static sites. All you need to do is just pick up the HTML and then render it on the browser. And the good part about this is you can give a browser cache expiration to a huge limit, so that every static asset can be cached completely or indefinitely, so that the site will behave very faster on the subsequent visits. Now, why, when I want to create a static website, why did I choose React.js? That would be the first question most of the people will think of. Fine, let me answer it this way. So first thing, React is component based and I don't need to repeat myself for creating the same widgets for each site, each page. Um, let's take an example. Let's say if I have the header and footer and I built it using copy paste technique on each and every HTML page that I build. And let's say this particular website has about 20 plus pages. And if there is a change, I can by default, I can definitely blindly do a find and replace all the files with the changes that are required. But what if there are a few pages? Let's say I have a home page, I have an about page, I have a features page. And when I click on about page, the class names of the about link needs to be different because it is the active page. And this renders each and every page to not be the same as all the pages. So this gives a big problem of finding and replacing the whole thing. So considering all these things, why not I develop the whole site in React? And the reason being, I can use components. I can also use SCSS, which is one of the most powerful CSS technique that I can think of. The reason why I'm using SCSS is number one, I can split the code between the pages. For example, if I have one particular widget, I can write the widget code on that particular file and then I can import it back to my home, like the whole SCSS page. And the next thing which I can do is use of mixins. So mixins are like functions in JavaScript to your CSS. CSS doesn't normally have variables on the client side, but even if we do the client side variables right now, we are not going to give a lot of trouble to the end browsers, which is not exactly is a requirement at this stage. So why not we kind of create the whole um, compilation part during the development phase, and then once we develop completely and if we are happy with it, why don't we like compile the whole thing into a static CSS, static HTML and static JavaScript and deploy it. That will be super fast, very much cacheable, and then it would be more better and best for the servers to serve. So this is the main idea and motivation behind this talk for today. Let's kind of get on to a demo where I will share my screen and show you what exactly I'm doing with a React.JS application and what are all the different static site generators I'm using with React.js and the one which worked for me the best. All right. Now let's jump into a complete demo, like a live demo. Let me start by explaining about my current system setup. So I'm using a Macintosh machine and it is a bit old because I'm using a Mac OS 12, which is Sierra, which came a long back, and it's perfectly fine to use this. And then right now, I'm also using Visual Studio Code for my IDE purpose or a text editor purpose. And then I'm using Google Chrome for my development purpose. And then a lot of different plugins, which I will be explaining you now. So when it comes to Visual Studio Code, you can do a lot of things with React. So Visual Studio Code supports you in a lot of different ways. First thing, it has a built-in terminal which will help you in running the terminal commands. For example, if you want to run any server from the command line, that can be possible from inside the Visual Studio Code environment. And then you have a built-in Git repository tracker as well. So this has an initialization of Git repository and a lot of things that can be done out of the box from React, uh, from Visual Studio Code, sorry. And then we have a lot of plugins that might be able to supercharge your developer abilities. So I would be going through quickly what are all the plugins that I'm using and then all the extensions that I'm using. The first thing which you could see is I've got Cobalt 2 theme. It is actually by Wesboss. I really like the videos by Wesboss and his theme is really nice. So what I did is I did a modified version of the Cobalt theme, and this is not the real theme. It looks very bluish, but I like the grayish format. So it's a crossover between Sublime Text Monokai theme and then Cobalt 2's Cobalt theme. And I've I'm generally using this particular extension, which is ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native snippets, which actually helps me in a lot of things. For example, all I need to do is with these things, I just need to enter 3 or 4 characters and it's going to write the code for me, which is really helpful in case of like faster development. Then I've got ESLint, which is going to help me with checking the JavaScript code for all the correctness. And then this is also helping me in running the making sure all the JavaScript that I have written is on standards. Then I've got this Git history and Git lens. I don't think Git history makes any sense right now, but Git lens very much. So in case if I'm using Git lens on any file, it can clearly show me who has been changing the file in the recent past. Also, it does give a kind of like, a file history on what all things that has been done. Let's go to Prettier. This is one of the most used extensions that I would recommend for everyone. Although we should be concentrating on writing indented pretty code, we should be mainly concerned about writing the code itself. So Prettier takes care of the indentation and even the spacing, etc. And it is completely configurable whether you are a fan of trailing spaces or not a fan of trailing commas like me. I don't like trailing commas. And then there are a few more cosmetic plugins which I would like to say. One is to do tree, and this one actually gives you a clear idea of where all the to-dos are available in your source code. This helps you in kind of like removing all the to-dos or making everything perfect. The next thing is VS Code icons. This is more completely a cosmetic one. It actually shows you all the icons for those which we are working on. Now I can show all these things in demo by getting into creating a small web application. So let's go ahead by installing create React app and then starting with a initializing with a new React application. I'm using npx here, which means it is going to download the create React app, execute it, and then remove it from the memory. This is very much easier because you don't need to stuff your memory with all these things. So this npx is not a typo, it's a real command. So we will go ahead by putting npx create react app and using dot here so that it is going to install my boilerplate on the same directory. At this point, we have installed a React application boilerplate in our current directory, which you can see it successfully installed here by looking at these things. So let me first make this whole zoom into this whole thing so that it looks a lot better. Now, the first thing what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna arrange all these files based on their base. This is the first thing I will generally do with almost all the React applications. So when I go to this folder, the SRC, all I need to do is I create 4 different files, one for components, one for assets, one for styles, and another one for tests. So what I'm going to do is anything related to styles, I'm going to put that inside the um, CSS files. Okay, the first thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up all these things because we don't require all these. So first thing, I'm going to get rid of the app.css. I don't need the index.css, and I don't require the logo.svg. Now all we require is this app.js and app.test.js. So first thing what I will be doing is I'll be putting the app.js inside the components and app.test inside the tests. So if I go back to our VS Code, you can see that these things have been changed. Now, the first thing which I will be doing here is I'll go to the index.js file and I'm going to get rid of this import and update this import to use the components slash app.js. So since it's going to be a JavaScript file, I don't need to do .js here. So without changing anything else, which we don't require anywhere, we are just going to save this. So once we save this, you can automatically see that the Prettier is doing its magic by converting all the quotes into double quotes and other things. The next thing which we are going to do is going for the styles. So I don't really require a CSS file, but instead I'm going to use a SCSS file. So when I do SCSS file, I need to obviously import this SCSS file. So going to the index, I'm going to do only import only once. So import styles app.scss. Now, to make this app.scss run correctly, we need to install another module, which is node.sas. So I'm going to install npm install nodessass, which is the compiler for SCSS and SASS files. The moment we install this, all these SCSS files can be used now. The main reason why I am using SCSS is, as explained, I can keep all the file sizes to the minimum possible. One particular file cannot be more than 100 lines. That is what is my personal suggestion for everyone, because once it goes more than 100 lines, it is hard to debug or manage. Now, since that I have updated this app, I need to go to the test file also, and then I need to update this too. So all I need to do here is I need to use components from the parent directory and app inside that. And what I need to do is I need to go change this one from learn React to React static. So once I do this and try to run npm test, it should be probably passing. So it's going to run the test, and let's wait. And it says it's failed. Right. The reason is we haven't got React static in our app.js. Let's quickly go to our components and app.js and get rid of everything. So now comes the power of using the React.js snippets. All I need to create here is an exported functional component called app. So if I put RAFCE, it's going to create an arrow function, a React arrow function component with an export. So that's it. All I need to do here is I need to do React static, and then I need to save it. The moment I save it, it's going to run the test again, and it's going to say it is passed. Once we are happy with the test, we will just close it for now, because this is not a test driven development. So, and by the way, test driven development is really good, so please don't ignore it. If your company is asking you or your organization is asking you to do a test driven development, please support them. All right, let's carry on. Now we are forgetting about the test, and we are going to start running the application. So right now I'll open up my one of my browsers. I personally recommend Google Chrome because it has all the, all the all the plugins that are required, plugins or extensions that are required for you to like use this and to work on. So let's go ahead and start building our site. So if I do npm start here, obviously it's going to start the React.js server. It is going to start the development server, and it's going to tell us that it is running at line number, port number 3000. And now we have got React static in our page, where this is what is going to be our site. Now the first thing which you can see is it is actually reading the SCSS file, because we have imported it and it is not complaining. So right now let's try out a few things that are working only in SCSS. Let's say we will go with the variables. So I'm going to put something like a color variable, and then I'm going to give an orange color. So orange color is FFA 500, which I personally like. So I'm going to change this to orange as well. And then I'm going to go for a body, and then I'm going to create something like background color is going to be light orange. So I'm just going to use an RGBA here in this case. So the color is going to be obviously orange, and then the alpha value is going to be like, let's say 0.75. And then if I save it, it's actually rendering the colors correctly. So this means we have the support of SCSS. And moreover, when you try to inspect this element and try to see what is the color that's body has, it's gonna be RGBA 255.165.0, 0.5. It is not exactly an orange here, or it's not gonna show us as hash FFA 500, comma 0.75, which are all invalid in CSS. So it is correctly converting it into RGBA values and then rendering it. This is one more power of SCSS. Now let's get rid of this one and then try to set our font family to be Open Sans, and then this is going to be our default font so that it looks a bit better. Right. Now let's kind of like try to understand what exactly we are trying to do here. So we are trying to build a static site through React.JS, and we require some kind of a framework. For now, let's use Bootstrap because everyone knows how to use Bootstrap. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to bootstrapcdn.com and then pick up the Bootstrap code, just the CSS part. And then what I'm gonna do is I'll go to the public HTML file, the index.html, and then I'm gonna change all these things to what I wanted. So this is gonna be a React static site, and then I will be adding a link which is for CSS, and I'll be adding the bootstrapman.css. So the moment I added, it automatically updated the title as well as our styles. Since the margins are gone, I could safely assume that our bootstrap styles are actually being taken into account. Let's close all the other files that are not required. And then the other reason why I am using Bootstrap, why I'm using SCSS is now I can use something called partials. Let's say I have another page which is called as a home page, and I would be putting all these files in home.scss with an underscore. So the moment I put an underscore here, and if I try to import here, I can just first thing I can import different files inside the CSS. And if I try to add this, I can add this as a partial. Now inside this file, if I try to use a home, and let me actually add the app as well here. So this way I'm also able to nest the files so that I don't need to create multiple rendering of files. Now the first thing which I'm gonna do here is let's start with the navbar. Okay, so we'll go to Bootstrap, get Bootstrap, and this is how basically I create a website based on Bootstrap. And if I need to use it on React, this is what I do. So if I go to the documentation and directly go for a navbar, I'll just go with a simple navbar. So a navbar that just has just the brand alone. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy this part alone, and then I'll just go to a new file here. So let's close these ones and let's go to the components, and I'm going to create a new file. And this is actually interesting because I'm going to create a shared header file. And now if I just type in shared slash header.js, Visual Studio Code automatically creates all the paths for you. So now all I need to do is do an RAFCE, and then I get this whole thing updated. So I'm just going to paste this here. Obviously, the first thing which you would see is React.js does not support class and a with a href equal to hash. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to quickly select all the classes and change them into class name, and then I'm going to change this a into span, which I can do using F2, and then I can get rid of this href equal to hash. And then once I save this, obviously I won't be able to see anything here. Now all I need to do is first thing is I need to use an app, and inside that I will start using the header. So if I try putting header here, it's going to auto import from the shared folder. So the moment I do this, it's going to show me the header here with the navbar here. So what I can do is I can also add a kind of like, a title, and then I'm going to use the title dynamically from the props. So this might help me in case if I need to change the title in any of these pages. So for now, we are not going to change title anywhere. So right now I'm going to use the title from here and putting as React static. So the moment I save this, it's gonna auto refresh it and then it shows me React static. And the main reason why I am not using the React.js site as it is, because for SEO purposes, when you try to look at the views page source of a React.js file, it doesn't have anything else other than the title, and the content are not displayed here, which can heavily affect your SEO rankings and search engine optimization. So this is another main reason why we are using React static and why we are using static site and not a React.js application for a simple site. Now, what is a site which doesn't have the links here? So what I'm going to do is, now we need some kind of a router. So I generally prefer using React router DOM. So what I'm going to do is I create a new tab in the terminal and then I'm going to install React router DOM. React router DOM helps us in routing techniques, and it is also very it's like a modular routing. So let me first install it, and then let's add that in our index.js directly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a few things from the React router DOM. So now it's installed. It's also VS Code will also suggest you with what are all the inputs that we have done. So the first thing I need to do is I need to use a browser router, and I'm using it as a router because I don't need to use the browser router as a whole. So inside the strict mode, I'm going to do a router tag, and then I'm going to put that inside the app. Now there is no difference that you can find it right now, but we need to use the different components to use the router, like for displaying the pages. Let's start with creating a few components. Let's start with two components, one being home, and then so this automatically creates all the HTML structure for me by using emmet, and then we can do the same thing for about page as well. So what I'm going to create is create a new file again as about/about.js. The reason why I am using a huge like a directory for each and every page is the pages might become bigger and they might have a lot of different sections in them. So for each section, I can use everything inside the same directory so that it is maintainable as well. That's the main reason, nothing else. So now I'm going to change all these home into about. So now since we have got all these things sorted correctly, all I need to do is go to the app.js where everything is being rendered, and then I need to create a switch here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import from React router DOM. And what am I importing? I need to import a route. I'm importing a switch. So these are the two things which I'm importing right now. So what I'm going to do is first thing I'm going to create a switch, and then inside that I'm going to create a route. So this route will actually take a couple of arguments, couple of properties. So what we will be we will be self closing this route as well. The first argument it's going to take up is the path. So we will be using the slash path for home, and since slash path is actually a filter pattern, it could also get to everything. So let's keep it at the first, and also we give the exact as true so that nothing else matches. And we will be rendering the component home from here. So home is going to be auto imported from the home page. And then the next thing what we are going to do is we will be trying to we can get rid of this exact equal to true and then use about here, and then let's use about as the component, and that gets auto imported from here as well. So the moment we save it, it's going to show us you are in home. And the first thing which we need to do is we need to change the header to add all the other links as well. So here in the header, we can add the links by using this one. So we can use another div to add the navbar items, and I'm just gonna use the same thing and gonna change it later. So as I said, you cannot use an anchor tag this way, and then we need to make sure we should be using something else. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get rid of these two anchor tags, and then and before doing anything, I'm going to change all these classes into class names. So now I would be using a special tag called link tag, and this is available from React Router DOM. So that has been actually imported right now, and now I need to use to and give a slash, because it's going to go to the home page. And then I've got this one as well. So link to, it's going to be slash about, and then I'm going to use about as the text. So now when I save this, it's going to again show me the same thing. Like, since it's a navbar collapse, I just need to get rid of these two things. Let's try to find out why these navbar links are not being displayed. So we need to have a show here. It's just a hack for now. So let's see how it gets displayed now. I'm sorry, it's a bit slow, but still we can't, we are not able to get this correctly because of this one. Right. Now I understand what exactly the problem is. I need to use the navbar expand here on the top of the navbar. So if I add this class and get rid of the collapse and show classes, now I would be able to see the answer. And one thing which I need to find is I need to have this nav link as the class for the link items. So I would be adding those two classes here using class name. And then once I save this, you can clearly see that the home is actually active and about isn't. So if I try to click on about here, it definitely shows, it goes to the about page, and then it is also showing us that the page has been changed to about. And clicking back and forward, it is definitely not going for the new pages. So it is just in the same page right now. So we have got our static sites working correctly. Sorry, we have got our routing working correctly in this point. So right now, what we need to do is there is another thing is called nav link. So if you try to check the nav link React router DOM, this will give you a way to use the nav link component so that on the correct nav tag, it's going to change the whole scenario. Like for example, so the active class name is one of the things that we will be looking for. So active class name is going to be, or you can use active style here. But unfortunately, since we have to use the active class here, we can get rid of this one from here, and then let's replace this with nav link. And then saving it has no different effect right now. But the moment we give this active class name here, it's going to change everything. For example, if we copy this one and add these two things for these two elements, and the active class name is going to be active, and then save it, then we can go inside our app.scss and then try to add one more SCSS called header, and then let's create one thing underscore header.scss, and then for the header we can quickly add this nav link. So how are we gonna do that? Let's go ahead and edit the edit the header page. So if you go to the header.js, so one thing which you might notice is however I'm creating new files here on the components, I'm actually replicating on the styles as well, so that if you have anything that you need to change in header.js, the corresponding SCSS will be available in header.scss. All right. So let's go ahead and change the header file and try to find out what we have got here. So we have got navbar, and we've got nav item, and then we have got nav link. These are the three things that we have got right now with us. So if we save this, and if we go to our header.scss, and then let's try to add these three things now. So all I need to do is, all these things are inside each other. So that's actually a good thing. So one thing which I need to do is, I need to save all these things. And since navlink has an active class, I need to use ampersand dot active so that it's going to apply to the same thing. Now, all I need to do is, I need to do a color, and I need to give a black color instead of the normal color. So I just did that. And then if I try to clear this off and then click on this or click on this, so I can clearly see that this particular color is getting changed. For now, we can let's do something like 999 or something like that, so that it is going to be shown as a default dull color. Now what I need to do is, I need to go back to my header.js and then get rid of the active class from the nav item. I couldn't see any active class, but still I couldn't find the difference between these two colors. Anyway, I'm going to use a completely two different colors so that it looks completely different. So I'm going to go to our header.scss, and let me use something like an F90, but still I couldn't get this color correctly coming in. So it looks really like a specificity issue. So right now, if I try to use the about here, I could see that both these things are rendered as active, which is kind of like a weird thing. So the current page, the both the yeah, that's weird. So I need to have a look at how active class name is needs to be given. Okay, the problem with this one is, if I go to slash about, the slash is going to be obviously applied for home as well, and I believe that should be the reason it is not applied correctly. So always this home will be like a wrong color. So if I do one more thing, like let's say another path which says projects or something like that, and then if I give projects here and then make a another route for this, and let me try with that one. So I go back to our app.js, and then I create another thing called projects, and the component is going to be a project component, which I can create from projects slash projects.js. And here, if I do an RAFCE and then give a div class name projects, and you're in projects inside a paragraph, so we can clearly see that it's currently in about, and if we click on the projects, it's going to be displayed in a different way. So since the home is being matched with everything, it's going to show the same thing. So that's the only problem which we need to somehow handle. So let's see what we can do for that. So for now, we will just forget about that, and let's continue on creating the static site here. So for now, since the main reason what I was doing is, I wanted a way to use my SCSS like this. At the same time, I'm also able to separate the CSS as well, right? So this is what I'm being I'm doing it here, and at the same time I'm also creating other files as well. So let me try to like do something like this: cp underscore home, and then I'm going to use underscore projects dot scss, and then the same way I'm going to change this into about dot scss. So now if I try to open projects and about dot scss, I just need to do a about here, and then I'll be changing this into projects. So now if I go back to my code in the JS files, all I need to do is, so home, I've got a class name home. In projects, I've got a class name projects, and in about, I've got class name about. And now I'm going to create another file which is going to be utils. So utils helps me in creating a lot of mixins. Let's start with the mixin here. So it is going to be a page wrap, and I'm going to give my top margin. So my, I would say margin on the y-axis. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a width of 1080 pixels, and then I'm going to give margin $my and auto. So this way um, the top and bottom margins will be based on whatever the my value is, and then auto will make it center aligned. So this page wrap is something which I'm going to use in all the page level SCSS. So now before doing anything, I need to first import these things. So I'm going to do at import, and since this is an utility, I'm going to import it on the level, higher level. So I could import this one, and then obviously I need to import the other files as well. So the first file is about, and the next one is projects. So now I've imported all these things, and then inside the utils, I've got this page wrap, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the home page, and then first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to include by using at include and page wrap by giving a 25 pixels margin. Now the moment I save it, I'm going to get the home correctly aligned to the perfect way. The same way, I'm going to do this include for all the other pages as well. So for projects, I'm going to do this. For about, I'm going to do this. So literally, I have just not, I haven't used any of the repeated codes anywhere. So it looks like the about page has some issues. Just a second. So the project page actually shows the about page. You're in projects, which is correct. And let's try the app.js. And this needs to show me the projects page. So if I'm going to the projects, it's going to show me the projects. If I'm going to the about, it's going to show me the about. So this is how it should work. And one thing which we need to see is the path needs to be exact. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the header.js again, and let's fix this part. So active class name should be active, but only when the home page is not, only when the route is not actually active. So let's quickly have a look at what exactly is happening here in terms of the component level. So if you see the header, it's gonna look at what all things that is being changed. But in the nav ref, there is something like, let's see if there is a any nav link exact for us. So there is an exact value as well. So now what we will do is, since this one would select every single thing because it's now selecting all those things, right? So let's also add an exact here. So the moment we added exact, so it's going to show only the one which is exactly matching. So let's go back to our SCSS file and then update the header colors. So the normal color should be something like a 999, which is a dull gray, and then the active color should be dark color. So which we have done perfectly. Now let's go open up a kind of like a thing here like this, and then let's see. So right now we have got everything perfectly working fine, right? Now the problem with this is if you try to view the page source of this, it's gonna show us nothing but just the static bundles JS. And this is completely not working out in case of a SEO point of view. So we need to make sure these things are working with SEO. So what I tried first was a React static generator, which is React static. As the name says, it's going to try to create a progressive static site, but unfortunately for some reason it was not working. So I'm going to go with something called React Snap. So React Snap is this particular thing which is going to help us with SEO. It works out of the box with Create React App and without any code changes that are required. It also uses a real browser behind the scenes by running a headless Chrome, and it's gonna run the whole application, and then it's gonna generate everything. So what we need to do is, all we need to do is we need to install this React Snap here. So right now, since our React.js site is looking perfectly fine, the only thing we need to do is change a few pages. So let's go ahead and change our index.js. So I'm going to close everything, go to the index.js. All I need to do is, first thing, I need to install this one. So let's do npm install React Snap. And then instead of importing the, what do you call this? Let's instead of importing the React DOM, I just need to use hydrate and render functions. And now here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this part. So this is what I need to do, right? So I'm just gonna copy the whole thing here and then paste it over here. So since we have got the document by get element ID root, we have done all these things perfectly. The only thing which we need to update is this particular part. So I'm just gonna cut this one and remove these things. And instead of app here, I'm gonna use this hydrate and render. The moment I save it, you don't find much difference here. It works as how it should work, with the routing, with all the SCSS, everything perfectly fine. Now there is one more thing which I need to do with the React Snap. So all I need to do is, inside the package.json, on the scripts, I need to create another script here. So it is called as post build. Post build runs once the whole build functionality is completed. So I'm going to create a post build and save it here. The moment I create something like this, I need to run the build, right? So right now, I don't have any of these build files right now. So the moment I do npm run build, it's going to do the same static site, but in a different way. So right now, if you see this, it's going to create only a few files, which is going to be your HTML file, your JavaScript file, and other things, which you can see right now here. Now, the moment it's going to create a snap, it is going to take exactly the snapshots, and then it's going to create the whole thing here. So the moment you see this one, it is following the same logic, and then it is also creating the index.html and for each and every route here, and then you have the main route as well, and everything now statically works. So even if you don't have, like, let's go for this. Let's open the build folder and then try to run a PHP server. So it's going to run on my localhost port number 80, so that I just need to run the localhost. Okay, so if I try to use this, and you can say that it is actually working fine, because it's going to go to new pages, like it's going to travel to new pages. But one thing which we are not sure about is, like, what's happening internally. Like, what if I kind of like disable the JavaScript, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go here and I'm going to disable JavaScript here and then reload the page. It's going to work as good as before. So it just says you need to enable JavaScript to run this app, which is completely fine. And if I click on other pages, it's going to render perfectly fine. So it does have the automatic. So in case JavaScript is supported, it's going to use the single page application mode. But the moment JavaScript is disabled, it's going to use the normal static site mode. So this is actually helpful in a lot of ways, because if I go to view source, it's going to show me all these things already available here. So this way, it's going to help me with SEO, and it's also going to help us with componentization and SCSS. Everything is there. And if you have already a React.JS application, you can just use this and convert your whole React.js application as a static website. So hope everyone has learned something on this. Please do give us the comments and let me know what your experience is. And if you have any other better ideas other than what I told you, that's also welcome. So hopefully this was a wonderful session, and see you all. Stay home, stay safe, and let's meet soon. Bye bye.